Hey guys, Drifter here, welcome to Warzone In Depth. In today's episode, I want to go over the Season 3 patch notes. As most of you are well aware, the new map Verdansk 84 is now live, the loot tables have changed, new weapons have been added, rebalanced, and a ton of stuff is going on in the game. Most importantly for this episode, Warzone, or Raven Studios, massively rebalanced a lot of its weapons, added new weapons, new map areas, new things to do, and even rebalanced some attachments as well. The two new weapons that have already been added are the PPSH and the Swiss K sniper rifle. They can be unlocked for free in the battle pass by grinding your way up to the appropriate levels, which is 15 and 31 if I remember correctly, or you can buy them instantly. If you're going to be one of those people that's spending money on the battle pass, then I would encourage you to use code DRIFTOR, and it has to be all caps, and the O is a 0 on the keypad over there. That does make this video sponsored by Activision, but using code DRIFTOR in the store ensures that you continue to support me, and it gives me a little kickback should you decide to spend a little bit of money. Okay, so let's talk about all the buffs and nerfs, and I'm going to start off with probably my two favorite buffs up front. The Cold War AK47 got a noticeable recoil reduction. I do want to clarify that it still kicks. It is not a low recoil weapon, but it's more manageable now. And because it's more manageable, it's a much more powerful weapon. The Cold War AK47 before already had a very similar time to kill to the old FFAR, very slightly slower, just a frame or two, and it's got great damage per shot, great bullet velocity and range, and a lot of things. So reducing the recoil makes it much more effective. It still kicks. It's still not a low recoil weapon. It's more in line with the CR56 AMAX, but it is far more manageable. Because it's far more manageable, it's far more deadly, and I'm seeing a lot more players and streamers and other sweats kind of gravitating toward this weapon so that they can delete you really, really quickly. And as of right now, it's kind of like the Cold War equivalent of the AMAX. I'm going to be working on classes for it later this week. But the one that I have really enjoyed the most, you'll probably see the most gameplay of here today, is the Fara 83 overall buff to the weapon. It got some changes, but it's a buff. Here are the changes to its damage and range. The maximum damage range got increased by 17%, so a nice little buff to its range. The actual maximum damage, though, got decreased from 33 down to 31, and the minimum damage got increased from 25 to 26. So what this does is makes it a little bit dumpier up close, but a little bit better at long range, which is weird, until you consider the fact that the recoil was also massively reduced. This weapon used to kick way too much to be usable in Warzone. Now it's actually a very accurate weapon in Warzone. It performs a little bit more like the M13, or probably more like the Kilo in terms of recoil. So with these changes, it went from a maybe possibly useful close quarters weapon to a very accurate suppression spray weapon in Warzone, and those are weapons that I love, so I had a lot of fun with the Fara 83. So yeah, while it may be a little bit worse up close, it is far better at long ranges, and it's probably my new favorite weapon. This is the one that I really gravitated toward. It's the one that I had the most fun with while making this episode, and the weed camo on it is really fun too. They rolled this one out on 420, and I picked it up because I couldn't help it, and I was super glad because now I actually get to use it all the time in Warzone with my stupid little marijuana leaves on it. The next popular topic is the FFAR Nerf. You may have noticed a few less of those going around the map. The maximum damage range was reduced by 15%. The neck and chest multipliers were reduced from 1.1x down to 1x flat, so no bonuses there. And the maximum damage itself, your up-close damage, got reduced from 30 to 27. You may note that that is just the right amount to cause you one more shot to kill, and the right amount to where if we don't have multipliers, it doesn't really matter where you hit them unless it's in the head. This effectively is going to add at least one more shot to kill at all ranges. It no longer rewards upper chest and neck shots, and effectively lowers the time to kill of the FFAR. It also has a little bit dumpier range, so it's a little bit less of an attractive option for long ranges. And one more final change, the ADS speed was slightly decreased too. I think that was to give it something back so it's not just a straight nerf, and to kind of ensure that it's still a close quarters combat weapon. This was an overall good nerf, but the FFAR is still popular. The FFAR is still a good gun. It is just not the gun. It's not the god gun. It's not the one that displaces the entire SMG class and will kill you faster than a shotgun, but it's still an incredibly effective weapon that should be respected, and I still see a lot of people using it, but I see less of them. I see people kind of really going back and forth on whether they like the FFAR or the PPSH, which we'll be talking about later in this video. Raven did something very interesting, and they preemptively nerfed the Groza because they were afraid that it would just immediately replace the FFAR. What they did is reduced the chest damage multiplier from a colossal 1.3 on that weapon down to 1.1x, so shooting people in the chest is less rewarding. That's upper chest. It got a recoil increase, so now it handles a lot worse. It could be kitted to be fairly accurate, now that's going to be more difficult. And it got an aim down sight speed decrease, so it's maybe a little bit snappier up close, and it really forces it into that close quarters combat assault rifle kind of range, but overall a little bit less punishing. And the reasoning behind this I actually thought was really well explained. They don't want the FFAR to be instantly replaced by the Groza. Kind of like a video I did a couple of weeks ago, I was saying if we're going to get an upcoming FFAR patch, then people are just going to move straight to the Groza because that weapon kills at almost the same speed. It takes less shots. I think it had more damage. And maybe the recoil and iron sights aren't quite as good, but they're still really good. So Raven said, okay, well, if we're going to nerf the FFAR, we should probably similarly nerf the weapon that's almost identical to it, because it would be a colossal oversight not to do that. So props to them for being proactive. The Krig 6 is a weapon that I don't play with in Warzone. It was one of the worst assault rifles in the entire game. It had nothing good going for it, but it's got a lot of body multipliers now. It used to have pretty much no body multipliers, or maybe low ones for the head, so it didn't really matter. You were going to have a slow time to kill weapon until the end of time, but now you get an impressive 1.5x damage for headshots. Next shots are 1.3, and body, and by body I mean both upper and lower chest, anywhere in the middle, you get 10% bonus damage for 1.1x. They didn't change the rate of fire, they didn't change the recoil, they didn't change the damage, but they gave you some multipliers. So if you hit people in the chest, you're going to deal more damage, you're going to kill a little bit more quickly, and that's effectively a damage increase if you aim well. I'm really on board with this kind of buff. I actually really enjoy buffing the body multipliers because that rewards people that have good aim. If you're aiming your weapon well, you reasonably should expect to kill people faster, especially if you know that those hits are going to count, versus the guys that are going to spray at legs because everything deals the same damage no matter where you hit people. That kind of balancing isn't as good, so I'm on board with the buff to the Krig, though to be fair, I did not get a chance to test it out before making this video. The QBZ is kind of an odd duck of weapons, a black sheep in the assault rifle category. It gets some minor buffs to its body multipliers, moving up from 1 to 1.1x all the way through, so it'll deal a little bit more damage when you hit people in the chest. Interestingly, with this weapon, they decided to give it an overall movement speed buff, so it's one of the faster assault rifles that you can run around with, and a buff to its strafing speed, so you can peek corners and strafe with it really quickly, which is kind of what it's supposed to be doing in Black Ops Cold War. It's this kind of sort of close range-ish, good handling assault rifle in Cold War, and they're kind of trying to bring that fantasy back over to Warzone and give it something to be unique. I don't think that this weapon is going to be very popular due to its struggle busing time to kill, but it at least has something unique for you to play with now should you choose to use it. If we're going to talk about fulfilling fantasies, the LC10 got a slight bullet velocity increase to help fulfill its playstyle fantasy as well. So the LC10 in Black Ops Cold War was this sort of MSMC like long-range submachine gun hybrid weapon, but in Warzone it didn't really do that because it had just dumpy bullet velocity, so they picked that up a little bit, makes it a little bit easier to hit people at long ranges or longer ranges. It's still not a super long-range weapon, and just kind of helps fulfill its fantasy a little bit better without any significant reworks to the weapon, though since they removed all the Modern Warfare weapons from the loot table, you're going to be getting to use the LC10 a lot more, so you're going to get to be very familiar with how it performs, because it's going to be one of the better weapons to pick up off the ground. The MAC-10's maximum damage was reduced by 1 point, which seems very comical in a game with 250 hit points. However, that is just enough to require it one more shot to kill. If it takes one more shot to kill, it's going to increase the time to kill very slightly and bring it back in range with the other submachine guns. The MAC-10 really was the dominant SMG, so it got a very tiny nerf to its base time to kill so that it's a little bit more competitive with the MP5. However, if you're hitting headshots with this weapon, it's still going to send people to Shrek Swamp. I think the MAC-10 is still going to be very popular. There were slight handling buffs to the Pellington of both its aim down sight speed and its stability and a few things like that to make it a little bit more of a popular, viable option. I'm still probably not going to use the Pellington because I don't like that weapon, and because I think it was the bullet velocity and drop was bugged for so long, it still kind of scares me. Speaking of bullet velocity drop and bug, we're going to be talking about the Swiss K a little bit later. The AUG and M16 got some massive reworks that were pretty much all effectively nerfs, and these are exactly right up my alley of exactly the things that I wanted of Raven, so I was very happy with this. The AUG now has a burst delay increase by 33%, which means it's going to be a lot slower to fire in between shots. It's going to be a lot less spammy, and it's going to be a lot more similar to the FR556 in terms of damage and burst speed. The neck damage multiplier got a massive reduction. It used to deal 1.8, it's now going down to 1.3, so it's not going to be blowing up people quite as quickly when you're aiming at the head and hitting neck and all these little areas. So this is going to be a significant time to kill reduction for the AUG, because that gun was killing people way too quickly at way too long of a range. And I'm totally on board with this. This is a great nerf to the AUG, which makes it a much more reasonable weapon to fight against, while still being able to kill people depending on how you're using it. The M16 was similarly nerfed, but not quite as hard. The M16 burst delay got increased by 10%, so not a huge change on that one, but the neck multiplier was reduced down way low to 1.1x as well. So with the M16, you can't spam quite as hard and your neck shots aren't quite as great, but it's still a powerful weapon. The M16 was not nerfed as hard as the AUG, but it's still strong, it's still popular. I see a lot of people using it. I think it's going to be the go-to burst rifle until the Carve 2 comes out. I got to see a little bit of Carve 2 gameplay because it was in the LTM before that was taken out. You could find it in the ground loot. That is effectively a G11 from Black Ops 1, and when used against people, even the base version with no attachments, it was very melty. It dealt a lot of damage, and it seemed like a really solid weapon. So when it does release, I'm expecting it to either be nerfed from when we first got to play with it, or it's just going to be an absolute monster. That's the one I'm going to kind of keep my eyes on as we move forward. On top of this, the bonuses that tactical rifle barrels got were pretty much massively reduced across the board. There were a variety of barrels that would change your rate of fire on both the M16 and the AUG, basically make it shoot faster. Almost all of those got their bonuses, I should say, were reduced by about 50%. So you're not going to be able to just kit the AUG with just the right attachments and turn it back into the old AUG. It will not be able to do that no matter what you do. And again, I think that's a very reasonable thing. A weird one is that the Black Ops Cold War concealment behavior has been added to the flashguard barrels for the Cold War weapons. I almost fumbled on that word because I very rarely use it. Black Ops Cold War had this kind of mechanic where not all of the barrel attachments would keep you off the radar. You would still show up when you shoot, but you fade away a lot faster. Instead of being on the minimap for a second, 2, 3, however long it was, you'll disappear much more faster. So they'll only see where you're at on the map if they're kind of already looking at it. This type of behavior was not in Warzone, so a lot of these attachments didn't have a lot to offer in that regard, but now they do. If you're running the flash guard, it won't keep you off of the map entirely, but your dot will disappear very quickly, so you still get some bonus from it, and I'm glad they brought that over. The aim down sight speed penalties were reduced on a couple of Cold War sites. The Susat multi-zoom, I think, was a 10% penalty reduction, which is a buff, effectively, and buffs to the Vulture and Ultra Zoom by about 20%, so they are a little bit less punishing when you put them on the weapon. They don't zoom in quite as slowly. And I want to talk about a couple of weapons here at the end, especially the new ones that full stats are not done yet on. The PPSH kills very quickly, however it has high recoil and, in my opinion, horrible muzzle flash. I kind of struggle to track enemies with this one. The gun kicks straight up and the barrel's a little bit big and blocky, so I often can't see what I'm shooting at very well. But it shakes a lot, there's a lot of light, fire, and smoke, so I can't quite see what I'm aiming at or track my targets very well. But when it hits, oh my god, it hits. This gun truly slaps people down to the ground, and I think it's going to be a popular weapon. I've already seen a lot of people using it, a lot of people enjoying it, a lot of streamers and commentators playing with it. This may become the new meta SMG because it's got gigantic rounds, it's got the time to kill, it just has really rough recoil, which is kind of what you would expect from a submachine gun. I get to play with the Swiss K sniper rifle a little bit, and I want you to take my opinions on this one with a grain of salt because I might be the worst sniper that's ever lived. But this is a true sniper rifle in the sniper category and not a marksman rifle like the Kar 98. I believe it's probably going to deal more damage than the Kar 98, especially for body shots. However, as it is now, I kind of don't like it because the base bullet velocity is nearly unplayable. It has a massive bullet drop, a really slow bullet. It's not a pretty weapon to shoot. at least when you just have the basic weapon unlocked with no attachments. I am assuming that you're going to need some specific attachments to really boost that bullet velocity and turn this into a competitive sniper, and I cannot wait to level it up, unlock it, play with it, and see if we can unlock its true potential. Guys, that is all for the patch notes, at least the public-facing patch notes for Season 3 of Warzone. There were a ton of sort of secret, hidden, behind-the-scenes changes, secret patch notes that Ace and JGod and True Game Data and myself all like to dig for, or at least them. I haven't been digging as much lately. I've just been trying to keep up with the meta, recovering from all my bizarre health problems. But there will be more stuff coming. There will be more weapon guides, especially on that Cold War AK47 and the Fara. Going to be testing a lot of attachments to see what they do, and really trying to understand the new meta of this game, and of course break it open and change things up for my advantage here on YouTube. Guys, I hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope that you learned something about all the changes going on in Warzone that helps you play better and become a better gamer. If you did enjoy any of this, don't forget to like, favorite, and subscribe. Drifter out.